So, welcome to another episode of Let's Talk Heart to Heart. I'm your host, Buggy, and I'm here with my dear friend, Nadine Helm. We are both trainers in nonviolent communication, or compassionate and authentic relating, as I like to call it. And we're here today to discuss, I don't even know how to give it a title yet, but I would say the mourning of the deep pain of separation that's happening in the world, particularly within the Gaza and Israel conflict. We're using that as a jumping board to go into the discussion around the pain of separation in the world. And we actually don't have a plan around how we're going to go into that conversation. Myself and Nadine were just speaking, and we had this sense that it would feel very authentic to sort of just say, this is the topic. We both notice a lot of mourning, a lot of grief and sadness. And we both have a sense of a compassionate lens towards this conflict that we'd like to discuss. And at least for me, it meets my need for authenticity and flow to just start the conversation and see where it takes us. So welcome. Nadine, would you like to add something to that before we jump in?
Yeah. I feel very, very grateful to be here with you, Emma, and to be able to start to give words to something that feels like a very, very, very emotionally loaded and delicate topic. And I do believe that it is so important to be able to share and to reflect and to continue to come back and to ground ourselves in the heart. I really love the name of your podcast, Conversations from Heart to Heart, or Speaking Heart to Heart. So that's my intention. Yeah. And I'm grateful to you.
Thank you, Nadine. Yeah. I also want to say that I feel a lot of gratitude that we're having this conversation because as you know, I've been speaking with Nadine about this over voice messages for some weeks and since the 7th of October start. And there's been in me a lot of overwhelm and a lot of confusion and just a huge big question mark of I don't know how to bring this burning voice of compassion that's within me and that so much wants to speak up for how I am relating to this in a world where I see so much separation. And that it's been so hard to bring words into a podcast. Like I was saying to Nadine, I've recorded so many short videos and written so many newsletters, and I have published some of them, but very few in comparison to the hours spent looking for the words. And I think that the hours spent looking for the words is really showing again what you said, the sensitivity to this topic, just knowing how many hearts are bleeding in this moment around the world. And knowing that when hearts are bleeding, there's very, very, very little space to hear each other. Mm-hmm. And so I just want to bring so much compassion and care and tenderness towards those people that are in many different situations, nationalities, parts of the world in pain right now. And I very much imagine that no matter what either of us say in this podcast, there will be the real possibility that some people will feel hurt or not seen or triggered by some of the things that we say. Because even if I take a position of nonviolence and trying to have compassion for all, it's still a position. And by taking that position, someone who is feeling pain on another side or in a particular, with a particular viewpoint might might feel that trigger and say, you're not seeing the depth of my pain with your nonviolence. You're not seeing how much horror I am going through. That nonviolence is not compassionate towards the depth of my pain. And so I guess I just want to start by acknowledging that, and having the conversation anyway, in trust that those emotions, those reactions are beautiful too, because they're caring for that need to be seen, whilst also speaking this voice of compassion, because I'm afraid of keeping myself silent.
Yeah. Thank you, Emma, for really bringing this awareness of the delicacy of this, of even speaking and with all the good intentions, speaking from the heart, speaking for, preserving life, that this still, can stir pain.
Yeah.
And it's something where I just like how it's been put by an organization that I recently received an email from. It's the Science and Non-Duality. They're going to have a question and answer session with Gabo Mate, who also speaks about this from his own background of being a Jew and surviving the Holocaust. But I just really enjoyed how they were kind of starting their email, and they wrote, "Such raw times call us to walk softly, to speak firmly, yet with compassion, and not fall into simplistic black and white narratives. They call us to look deeply at our own bias, and more than ever, not to lose sight of our shared humanity. We can stand against violence while seeking understanding. And we can grieve the loss of innocent life in Gaza and Israel. And we can oppose antisemitism and islamophobia, denounce terrorist attacks and collective punishment." So it's really, to me, it's really, how can we hold both and stay rooted in humanity, like center humanity and center.
I'm so touched by the beginning of this email that you just read out. I'm connecting with a sense of beauty in me right now, that those words have very, very much touching the heart of what I'm connecting with in this. It's the and both.
Yes.
All the way, both. That it's so natural for me to take a side and to give my condolence, my grieving, my support to one group of people more than another, because that gives me a sense of belonging and purpose and home sometimes. But over the last weeks, the grieving has been so much like moving between and for both sides, Israelis, Palestinians, the people in Gaza. Only the other day, I just fell into a heap of tears in the bath, and I couldn't stand up, and I was just crying so deeply for the pain of what the people in Gaza are going through right now, the torture. And yet I noticed the part of me that is Jewish, that is Israeli, that is really, really afraid of the pain of those people not being seen and heard.
Mm-hmm.
And there's moments when I swing between taking sides in order for me to feel a sense of closeness And there's almost a wish for me to be around other people who are Jewish or Israeli, so that I know that I will feel safe to just mourn what's happening there. And it's really painful to imagine I need to go and find only the others who are a part of my culture in order for me to feel safe to mourn what's happening there.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, so this to me really sounds to that deep, deep, deep wish and desire to really create an atmosphere, a container where we simply, or not simply, where we, in all its complexity, hold the grief and the pain of everyone.
Yeah. Yeah.
And to feel safe with that. And that these containers are currently not very available.
Yeah.
Places are delicate places because the pain is so raw.
Yeah. Yeah. And it makes so much sense to me that the pain is so raw that no one has any availability left to hear the other. And it's like we are just in this immense, continuously building mountain of grief that makes it so hard. It's like I see both sides as so absolutely full beyond the maximum, that there's really barely any space to have grief and hearing of the other. And I had this conversation with my housemate in the car the other day that really, it was just, I feel close to tears now, because it really, I feel so much appreciation for the container of holding and space that was created for me by my housemate, who is also a psychotherapist and trained in nonviolent communication as well. And we spent like a lot of time building up to a place where I could just grieve without this yes but. And this yes but for me is like the epitome of one of the most painful things in this conflict and in many conflicts, because as soon as one person is grieving the loss on their side, someone else who's grieving the loss on their side, and even this word side for me is painful to use, right? But for now, I use it for simplicity. So someone else is grieving the loss on their side, and they feel pain when they hear me grieving my pain. And then there's a yes, but. And that yes, but negates the possibility of this pain being seen and heard. And it's like, no, but that pain is greater than or more important than. And so this happens on both sides, and there's almost like this ping pong match of like, yes, but, 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 yes, but. So then no one has the experience of recognition. Mm-hmm. No one has that container of being held. Yeah. And, coming back to my housemate, it was so meaningful for me. It took almost half an hour of me sharing the fear of, I was so afraid to share how it would be just to express my pain without my own inner yes but. Because my own inner yes but towards the pain of those in Gaza is so huge that I don't even allow myself to connect with the pain for those in Israel without saying yes but towards myself. And yes.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I think that is such an important aspect that you're also highlighting, one on the level of the dynamics. When two sides are in pain and both are full with their pain, that there is no space, to hear each other. And that this currently, is what we're seeing, and what we're experiencing. And I also really appreciate your own self-awareness around seeing how this even happens inside of you, how you are, inside of yourself, having the same argument going on, whenever your heart is filled with pain in the one or the other direction, that, also inside of you, it's so hard to create the space to just fully mourn, when comes up. And it is mourning that is connected to, so to say, one side, to fully allow that and to trust that your own heart also naturally holds the other person, because this is what the other person or the other side, because this is what I so often just see what is happening when I allow fully what's there. Then after this recognition and happened, that there is a natural movement of wanting to connect, whether this is a conflict that I'm having with one other person in my personal life and my family or among my friends, that once I have a sense that I'm seen and I'm heard, or I allow myself to fully feel my pain, feel my anger, feel my hurt, and maybe the other person meets me there, or I do this for myself, or with the help of a friend, that there is a point when there is, like a flower that wants to blossom and to open and to reach. I want to be in connection, I want to, and there is awareness of the other side. And I truly and firmly believe that. And somehow now I'm thinking of what one of my participants said maybe a year ago in the courses that I'm teaching the work of living compassion, Robert Gonzalez's work. And she said once that the intensity of love and the intensity of pain go together. So yes, so we feel the pain because we love. Our heart is torn into pieces because we love. And I do believe firmly that in the essence of our love, it doesn't differentiate. It doesn't differentiate skin color. It doesn't differentiate ethnicity or religion or any of that. All of this is learned. And we're not coming into this world like that. So I do believe that there is an authentic care and an authentic heartbreak that really doesn't differentiate any of that. Once I allow, the first layers or the movement between, maybe it is first, like in one moment it's more this side and in the next moment it's this, but I think we carry everything in us.
Yeah. I'm really touched by what you say, Nadine, and it's really particularly this last sentence. I mean, everything around how my heart naturally opens up to love when I have space to hold, when I give space to my own grief and my own sadness, and this awareness that grief and love are one and the same, and that love does not choose a skin color or a flag or a nationality. And Aziz, who was, I believe, a Palestinian moderator of this talk, he said something, and I can't remember the exact words, but it was something like, when I see a child who has died, I don't want to think what's their flag, what's their skin color, what's their nationality before I grieve for them. And this for me is really true. This for me is really true. And it's very painful that I do see that happening and in this conflict.
Yeah.
And I'm afraid to even name it, Nadine. I'm afraid to even name it.
Yeah. You want to say some more about your fear?
Yeah, I'm touched by your tears as well and your sadness in response to what I'm sharing. I'm afraid of the yes but, the invisible yes but. I'm afraid that it's easy to feel compassion for one side more than the other because of history or because of our certain views on history. Yeah.
For me, it's even relevant to acknowledge that there are different views of history. I think there was a time when history is neutral. It is not. It is not. I need to learn that it is not. It's very colored by views. And so to just acknowledge that, maybe also for a sense of compassion, that we grow up with certain narratives and certain, even how history is presented to us, that is in support of certain narratives, or how the media plays into that. That it's very, very disturbing, I imagine, to start to open to understanding that there may be different narratives, different versions of history, depending on how you grew up, what the circumstances were, and to really fully honor that, to know that we are a product of the society that we grew up in and the stories that surrounded us. So I think there's something somehow there is sweetness in me to and a sense of compassion to really let that fully in, that people have developed views based on what they learned.
Yeah.
And it also, in some sense, gives me some hope that if we allow each other to have different experiences with each other, then we can also learn new things. We can actually meet each other and put a layer of different experience over maybe narratives that have been passed on over generations.
Yeah.
And I also want to acknowledge trauma that has been passed on over generations. So it's not at all an easy thing. And that ties back to the pain that needs to be seen and held and healed on both sides. And it's running so deep.
Yeah.
And that can be, I guess, translated into any relationship that I have, when there is conflict or when there is pain that is running so deep.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah. So I watch inside my own mind the habit of wanting to understand, the root of the conflict, or, kind of like who started it when, so that we know who needs to stop or who needs to, or, I can see that inside of me. But I realize, I have been trying to investigate a little bit about the history even before 1948. I think this was when Israel was founded, and even before that. And then at some point, I just reading about the last century, I couldn't even take all of it in, all of the attacks, all of the bloodshed that was already happening. I felt dizzy, And then I realized that rather than doing that and entertaining that habit, which is also learned, of to find out okay, who started, who needs to stop,
who did it,
how can we
who's to blame,
create fairness or justice, exactly. that I really want to kind of like more look at this dynamic inside myself and to devote myself to counteract anything that I don't find useful, that I see myself doing internally, you know, any violence within myself, and to ground myself ever more firmly in, you know, in love and in nonviolence and in compassion. And what helps me there really is to see that throughout history and also now, there are people who remain capable of doing exactly that, of not looking at the skin color or the religion, but to just, you know, let their heart choose that they do not want pain, they do not want to inflict pain, they don't want any more killing to happen, you know. And so one of the things, this is what helps me kind of like hold on to a sense of, this is what's possible for us as human beings. This is what I would see as our greatest and highest potential, and maybe our true essence, you know, to actually take in, you know, whenever people manage, even though they went through harassment, pain, loss in their own lives, in their own families, murder, whatever, violence they've been exposed to, that they'd still manage to see the other person as a human being, you know, that has a belonging to a certain group. And there are a few things that I was so moved by. Is it okay if I just
name? I'd love to hear, Nadine.
Yeah. So one is more from the history, and I when I was doing my research, there was this massacre in Hebron in 1929, and there were Arab families hiding 435 Jewish neighbors in their homes, endangering their own lives, while the police was not able to protect them well enough. So they protected these families, endangering their own lives in the midst of the violence and the crisis that was happening, which I found so touching. And then I have two more examples of that are recent now. One is the Jewish mother that I saw on Facebook. Her name is Michal Haller. I don't know if you saw her, but she her only son on October 7th, and she so clearly speaks out for love and for peace, and she says, "Not in my name. I don't want more killing to happen in my name." And it just gives me goosebumps. And another person who also shared the same commitment to nonviolence is the brother of Chaim Katzman. I don't know if you heard of him, but he was a peace activist, and he has also been killed in the events starting on October 7th. And his brother Noe Katzman, he also said that, "I want to support the people who call for calming down and for peace and for saving lives, not the people who call for more hate and more violence. That's my request to everyone. And I know that's exactly what my brother would want it to do." So not in his name and not in the name of his brother. They don't want to see more violence. And I think those people are people who inspire me so deeply, because they could turn inside themselves to hatred and to violence, and maybe they have moments where their heart is in such pain, and still they manage to somehow hold that and to metabolize it in a way that they can come back to calling for peace.
I really appreciate you, Nadine, sharing these names, these kind of examples or I think it's so important to have examples for that commitment to nonviolence right now in this conflict, because it gives me hope. It gives me a direction to look for, whilst I'm seeing so much of the opposite in social media and in the news. When I look out for those voices, I connect with a sense of hope. I'm going to share this story, and I will put a link in the podcast notes with the name of the woman who I'm speaking about, because I really want to honor her as well with her name. But it was a mother in Gaza who lost her son. She said, like, I want you to be my neighbor, even after the loss of my son's life. I want us to be together. I want us to stay connected. And I see your pain and I see mine. And I don't remember her exact words, but she was speaking from such a strong voice of compassion and love for those that had killed her son. And just in the last weeks, and I just found myself really in awe of where that comes from. Mm-hmm. And at the same time, there's a part of me that's saying, of course, this is alongside our ability as human beings to move towards violence. Like, that's a part of us being human, is that we have a violence within us that comes from a deep protection of life. And it comes from that deep part of us that is feeling love towards those that we want to protect. And so violence comes in that deep protection of life. And just as this is so much a part of my humanity, so is that compassionate voice of those mothers and those people who have lost their loved ones and are still speaking for peace. And even as I say this, I feel a fear that anyone who has a different reaction, that wants vengeance, that is angry, would hear this as they should be compassionate, because I really don't believe that to be true. Mm-hmm. I really, really, really recognize the beauty also in that anger that comes with protection, and with pain and with grieving. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. I wouldn't want that to be seen as lesser than, or less like a spiritual bypassing almost of, like, you shouldn't feel angry, you shouldn't feel protection, you shouldn't want revenge. Because I so see that what all of those natural responses are caring for is like a very, 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 very deep commitment to life. And to love. It's only the tragedy that I mourn is that when I choose more violence, then the cycle continues, because it's never ending. It's never ending, because my pain touches your pain with violence, and then you, on the receiving end of violence, responds to me with your pain and violence, and then we do this ping pong again, and we get locked in the story of who I am the victim and you are the perpetrator. Each time that I receive the violence, I become the victim and you are the perpetrator, and then we lose that possibility to take responsibility for the impact of our actions naturally, because we are in so much pain, and we deflect it onto the other side. But which also means that I don't see you as human anymore. Yeah, I'm just really right now touching a deep mourning in me, like a sense of hopelessness, around how much, even in this vengeance, there is a wish to be deeply recognized for the hurt and pain that we are experiencing on either side. We want the other to meet us there and like, do you see the fucking pain I feel right now? I want you to experience it with me. I don't want to be alone in this. Look at what has been taken from my life.
It's a cry for empathy.
It's a really deep cry for empathy. And that's why I'm crying now, because I connect with some hopelessness that, like, with such deep levels and layers and history and years of pain and violence and that mountain just becoming so high, I touch a hopelessness in me that's like, where to even start with really being able to hear each other without moving to solutions, because all this solutions focus is jumping 20 steps ahead of where the hearts and bodies of people that are in revenge mode or that are in protection mode are feeling right now. Whatever solution right in this moment is given will not meet people where they are. I want to separate that from ceasefire, because for me, ceasefire is like a call for stopping the violence so that we can do whatever else it needs to be done, whether that's healing, reparation, listening before moving to solution. It's like a what we call in nonviolent communication protective use of force. It's almost like I find in myself a real wish to force ceasefire right now. Like if I could just go and like literally block all of the guns and bombs from, if I had the power to do that, I would do that, even if people would be kicking and screaming at me.
The bloodshed has to stop. It's incredible numbers of children that are dying.
Yes.
I read and heard reference to every 10 to 15 minutes, one child in Gaza dying.
Yeah.
And the UNICEF secretary has referenced that every day 420 children are being injured or killed. And the numbers are in the 5,000s now.
Yeah.
And more than 8,000 civilians also in the last 26 days. And that's just horrendous. And for that, I would like to see what you've been referencing as well. A protective use of force by the international community.
Yeah, to stop this killing.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. To really, 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 really bring out all the stops and stop the killing. That doesn't mean by killing more people on the other side. I'm afraid that this protective use of force might be heard as, okay, so now we'll just bomb the Israelis to stop them from killing them. But really to really call with every cell of our beings for ceasefire, to stop the violence, to stop the death of innocent people.
Yeah.
Because it's just so unbelievable to keep seeing that unfolding and knowing, yeah, that the unsurmountable mountain of pain is just becoming higher and higher. And innocent lives, beautiful human beings are lost in this. Every moment, it's unimaginable. I notice like a block in myself in this moment to even feeling what that means. How many lives are being lost in every moment?
Yeah. Just want to pause there with you and take a few breaths.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. And for that to be allowed, I find this one quote pretty inspiring. And it also ties back into meeting ourselves and our hearts where they are. And this is by Jeff Foster. Is it okay if
I love Jeff Foster. Please do read it,
Yes.
Jeff.
And it's entitled How to Open Your Heart. And he says, do not try to open your heart now. That would be a subtle movement. I start again, I had this fly. He says, do not try to open your heart now. That would be a subtle movement of aggression towards your immediate embodied experience. Never tell a closed heart, it must be more open. It will shut more tightly to protect itself, feeling your resistance. A heart unfurls only when conditions are right. Your demand for openness invites closure. This is the supreme intelligence of the heart. And then he goes, instead, bow to the heart in its current state. And I want to add whether this is, the anger, the thoughts for revenge, the pain, the hopelessness, the despair, whatever it is each moment, bow to the heart in its current state. If it's closed, let it be closed and sanctify the closure. Make it safe even to feel unsafe. And trust that when the heart is ready and not a moment before, it will open like a flower in the warmth of the sun. There is no rush for the heart. Trust the opening and trust the closing too, the expansion and the contraction. And this is the heart's way of breathing, the beautiful fragility of being human, and all held in the most perfect love.
Yeah. I'm so touched by his words.
Yeah. Yeah, and I think to me, nonviolence really, really, really starts inside ourselves. And maybe this is the moment where we can go back to the questions that I read that Mickey Kashtan, an NVC trainer, also posed on the Global Home Network.
Yeah, please do.
Yeah. And it's also the only refuge that I thought makes sense for me to turn to is to, Thich Nhat Hanh, a Buddhist monk, he used to say, the way out is in. So, let me see. Yeah, so some of those questions that, I feel inspired to reflect upon, and maybe some of whoever might be listening might feel inspired to turn to is, what Mickey posed. What does it mean to you to be committed to nonviolence in these moments, in moments that we're facing? What does it look like internally? How you're holding your own inner movements of the heart, opening and closing, of your own, taking sides or judging or wanting to revenge. And what does it look like in how you talk with others about what is happening? How am I taking responsibility for my inner world and for my inner experience? And in some ways, what seeds, in my words now, what seeds do I sow? Mm-hmm. And there is actually one more quote that I have, if I may, by Martin Luther King. Mm-hmm. He wrote, the ultimate weakness of violence, and that's what you have been describing too, is that it is a descending spiral, begetting the very thing it seeks to destroy. Instead of diminishing evil, it multiplies it. or here we could say diminishing pain. It multiplies it. Through violence, you may murder the hater, but you do not murder hate. In fact, violence merely increases hate. Returning violence for violence multiplies violence, adding deeper darkness to a night already devoid of stars. Darkness cannot drive out hate. Only love can do that. And I have to say to you, I have decided to stick to love. I know that love is ultimately the only answer to the problems of humanity. And hate is too great of a burden to bear.
Yeah. And I notice myself really almost wanting to sanctify the space that's been created in those quotes that you just shared. Of course, I have natural responses, ways that I could unfold and connect more to them. But in a way, I really find this a very sacred place to maybe end the podcast and leave the listeners with their own sense of connecting to those quotes in whichever way their hearts feel moved to. And I might just ask you one more time, Nadine, to read the question from Mickey Kashtan, who, by the way, is an NVC trainer who is really committed to finding other ways for us to live compassionately as humanity. Very much recommend looking at her work. So if you could say that one more time, and then we will leave you at the end of the podcast with that thought, perhaps as an invitation for a journaling prompt that you could take with yourself, or maybe a discussion topic to have with some friends.
Mm-hmm. What does it mean to you to be committed to nonviolence in these moments? What does it look like internally? What does it look like in you, in how you talk with others about what is happening? What can we imagine a collective nonviolence response?
Oh. Thank you, Nadine.
Yeah, thank you.
To Nadine. It feels like the beginning of maybe we will have a part 2. We'll see. I would certainly love to speak with you more, because it's also soothing for my heart, and I have a sense of togetherness with you, and it does connect me with hope alongside the hopelessness that I feel. And I hear you sharing from your heart and bringing these examples, all the examples of nonviolence, I find really, really supportive to connect with. And I imagine for others too. Maybe we can, I created a resource list for people to stay up to date with the conflict, which I will add to the notes for this podcast. The resource list is committed to nonviolence in a very human way, because of course it's gathering resources from different humans. And perhaps we can create a section where there is like quotes,
videos or something.
Yeah, I think there is already a section that's inspirational videos. So I will make another section that's like inspirational quotes, and so that we can put all of those quotes and poems and stories for people to reference to and share with others, so that sharing can bring about more of that sense of hope, more of that guiding light towards compassion.
Yeah.
All right. So thank you, everyone, for listening to myself and Nadine in all of our humanity, in the moments of inspiration and helplessness and despair. I noticed that there isn't a sense of full completion in me, because there is so much more to say around this. And yet, we don't want to create a podcast that's like 6 hours long. So I just appreciate you for listening to us until now. and staying with us, even if you noticed triggers in you. And if you did, I really welcome you to share them with us, to share your responses, whatever they are. There's something that in me that really trusts in the beauty of all expressions. And yeah, so even if you do have an anger or frustration after hearing either of us, I would really, really welcome and love to hear from you, your honesty. And equally, if there's something that has been touched or moved in you. And I just want to thank you, Nadine, so much for bringing your heart, your real tenderness and connection to the topic with so much love, and all of the inspirational quotes and stories that you brought that really add color and light to this podcast. Yeah. Thank you, Nadine.
Thank you, dear Emma, for facilitating, for holding this podcast, and for your dedication to compassion in this world, and for bringing your voice even though you're trembling and you care so deeply, and that's why you cannot stay quiet, and you bring such sensitivity to the complexity of the topic. I appreciate it so deeply. I appreciate your voice and your heart and your being. Thank you, and thank you to everybody who listened to us and who is, seeking, as we are, for how to be in this world in integrity with what we hold dear.